So, all right, tonight we are here with Mr. Mark Herman for a very special designer-assisted unboxing of his newly released game, Army of the Potomac. Thanks entirely to me. It has taken weeks and weeks and weeks to get this organized. Mark was like, yeah, I'll do it, whatever. And I just kept not getting to him. So, Mark, thanks for doing this.
Happy to do it.
And I'm very happy to be unboxing today the second volume in the Civil War Heritage series. It looks fantastic. I think Rebel Fury is fantastic. So my hopes are very high for this too. Now, we've talked a fair amount about this series and the game system and all that on camera in many cases. So I don't know that I want to re-ask a ton of those questions, but I know that you have a projected, 6 or 7 total volumes in this series that you'd like to do?
Yeah. So what's important? Well, let me start off, but I always had this view. So I'm my missioner. I have to start at the beginning. So many years ago, I did this game called Gulf Strike. And if you've ever played Gulf Strike, it plays like at 2 different levels. It has a strategic level, and then you transition into the operational hexes on the map. And there's a transition. It's got a whole process, and it worked really, really well. So when I did this series, I saw it as a 3. I wanted to do the first 3 are the building blocks for the whole series. Going forward, this is not going to change any. So this is kind of locking in. So the first one is Rebel Fury, and we've already discussed that. And that is like, think of that as the battle level. You're an army commander. It's Chickamauga, it's Chancellorsville. Put you guys down, have a battle that you can read out of the books. And I've talked about how I wanted the combat narrative to start to mimic what I see in the books and not the typical force ratio, blue and gray, or whatever has been going on for the last 50 years. I wanted you to feel that narrative that I keep reading about in every book I've ever read. So I feel like I accomplished that in Rebel Fury. Now, this one is where I introduce the campaign rules. So campaign rules are, casualties, wagons, and railroads, and replacements and ammunition and all that kind of good stuff. And I want to talk a little bit about ammunition in a moment. And so this one, but the key part is that if you know how to play Rebel Fury, you will immediately be able to play all the scenarios except for the campaign scenario right out of the box. You don't have to read any new rules. You just basically have to set it up and go, whatever the few special rules there might be for a scenario, and you rock and roll. And so that was what I wanted to achieve, and that's totally true. Now, as you know, there's a 3rd volume already on the P500. And I think today I was within, I think it was like 36 or so to go to get it to the P500 level. And that one brings in this theater level where now you're bringing in that second level, like in Gulf Strike, where you have a theater. And I think I did a video on this. So anybody wants to go check it out, it's on my YouTube page. But now you've got the Stratego blocks and a system I called my 3. It's basically Stratego meets 3-card Monte. I am from Brooklyn, and so you've got very quickly. You don't know what the Rebs are doing or what the Union's doing. However, you will learn that it's not looking for carriers at the Coral Sea. You see, right. Because it turns out that in 1863. The Army of Northern Virginia and the Army of the Potomac were the 9th and 10th by population largest cities in the United States of America. So if you're moving like St. Louis around, they're walking basically, right? Right. So once you figure out kind of where they are, they're not going to fly, right? So the maximum and I talk a lot about this in the article in the Lee Moves North booklet nobody's seen yet other than a few, is that intelligence, you can fake the guy out for a little while, but once the South gets either in proximate to, goes into the Union or such, basically, you're going to start being found. And once you're found, they don't know exactly where you are. You see that in the books all the time, but they know approximately where you are. You're not going to jump over the mountains. In fact, I just read, I don't know if you saw my Twitter post this morning. I was reading an account by this guy named Dr. Steiner. Have you ever heard? Stop me if you've heard. Okay, yeah. So Dr. Steiner was a member of the Union Sanitary Commission. And Dr. Steiner's job was to basically oversee camps and hospitals. And so he had gotten very good at, he knew what he was looking at when it came to the condition of people and how many there were. Because, he goes in the hospital, he can very quickly ask me how many people are in this hospital, how many guys are in this camp. He had a way of, accurately figuring this out. And in the Antietam campaign, so this is 1862, Steiner gets the last train, like the last train to Clarksville. He gets the last train to Frederick before the Rebs cut the lines. And he's sitting at a house on September 9th, 1862, on a front porch, and the entire rebel army walks in front of him. And his report, his diaries, by the way, I read his diary. He has diaries that he published. This is the very first person. And he gets the amount of the Rebs down to basically within, 1,000 accurately. He also talks about the condition of the units and are they healthy? And I mean, he's looking at these people and evaluating the entire army of Northern Virginia, and he writes it all down. And it's about the most accurate. So what I'm saying is, once you get past the Potomac, like when Jubal Early walks up to the elders of York and says, "I'm Jubal Early and I want these things," they say, "Who'd you talk to?" "We talked to Jubal Early." So they know that Jubal Early is in York, Pennsylvania. It's not like a secret. He's not wearing a disguise, and and Kemper's giving speeches and who he is, and he's giving speeches in the town square, and Jubal Early tells him to stop. But my only point is that unlike a Pacific game where carriers get found and they get lost, like remember you played Pacific War against Fred Serval, and they get lost.
Yeah, you don't know within 200 miles where those carriers are. Right,
but these guys are walking, and like I said, once you know where somebody is, they're not going to be more than 20 miles a day later, one way or the other. So, it's not that hard. But anyway, that's for Lee Moose Rumble. Now let's get back to Army of the Potomac. So Army of the Potomac is the base Rebel Fury level, which is the battles, and it's got a campaign level. And it's got and I have to say, I'm very pleased with how the supply rules came out. They really, I think, accurately capture enough detail of what's going to happen and how it works. Mechanistically very simple, but it actually is fairly accurate, captures the, what happens when you try to move rapidly with a wagon train that's, got 1,400 vehicles in it.
We wargamers and people who have read a fair amount of military history can forget just how much space a column of troops marching takes up.
By the way, just for give an example, half of the wagon train that Lee retreated from Gettysburg with took 18 miles. Yeah, 18 miles at a half-mile scale. It's 36. It's an entire map sheet is covered by one wagon train.
Right.
I mean, I looked at all that, and what's important about the logistics, by the way, and I had this interesting discourse. One thing about certain people don't like when you don't validate whatever they say, and they get very nasty very quickly, which is sad. But like I said, I don't have to agree with everybody, especially when I have a lot of numbers, and the other person is just going, "Well, I read a lot of books too." I was like, "Okay, but did you analyze the books?"
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you.
No, it's whether you agree. But, one of the things I find is that there are 3 levels of research, and I find that war gamers, so the first level of research is you're reading like a first-person account, and it gives you whatever they said. Okay. And then in the academia world, and you draw, and historians then draw conclusions that they put in books, and those are the books that you and I read. And those conclusions are, here's what they said, and here's my logic, and you can read, and if you read enough books, you're going to find at least 3 different views of the same damn thing. And I'm not talking about lost cause kind of stuff. I'm talking about just 3,
different analytical conclusions.
Different conclusions. Look, we all know the narrative because that comes out of the OR, the official records of rebellion.
Right.
But what you draw from that, and they make certain comments that are direct comments. So, for example, that's what people get to. But the third thing, which is what I was taught to do, is by the way, I actually have a history degree. What I was taught by Professor Oline at Stony Brook, who was he's an ancient historians have to ask different questions because they don't have so much data. And the question that I was taught to ask, and what I do when I do my game research is, what are they not saying? I understand what they're saying because they said it. I understand analyzing what they said and arguing with other people about you're right over what they are. But the third level of question is, what are they not saying? And so when I do my research, I'm asking that question all the time. And one of the dimensions of that is in the supply rules that are in Army of the Potomac. So that's where the relevance of this comes. And although I call it artillery ammunition, right? You get artillery ammunition points. It also represents small arms. And there's a flank attack rule in an optional rule, which I play with, especially in the campaign, that starts to bring this to light is, so for instance, a Conestoga Union wagon, which by the way, most of the Confederate wagons were eventually Union Conestoga wagons. They captured enough of them. They were better wagons than what they had in most cases. A Conestoga wagon will hold from 400 to 600 rounds of artillery ammunition. Do you know how many rounds of small arms it'll hold?
No.
15,000.
Okay.
However, you got 300 guns, but you got 70,000 guys. So 70,000 guys, and on average in the Civil War, so if you look at a distribution, right, which I've done that work on average, a gun, being an artillery piece, or a Union soldier will shoot 60 rounds per battle. In other words, that's one cartridge box, and per turn. I mean, that's it's a per turn kind of thing. But in a battle, they'll shoot about 60 rounds. So now, when you go to Gettysburg, right? Gettysburg, the artillery is the extreme outer edge of that curve, which says they're shooting more like 90, closing in on 100 in some cases, rounds per gun. If you get to the Wilderness, they're shooting far less artillery ammunition, but, and this is where people go, well, you should have special rules for artillery ammunition in the Wilderness. The answer is yes, but their small arms ammunition expenditure went up by triple. So the question is, I can have a special rule that says in the Wilderness, hey, artillery is not as useful, but then but if I leave it at that, I don't capture the fact that I have to have a rule that says, but the small arms ammunition is triple. And when I actually did the calculation, it was more or less 6 of one, half dozen of the other. So I didn't put a special rule in because they kind of balance each other out. And also what turns out is the artillery that was in the Wilderness was extraordinarily effective when it was in the right place because you couldn't see anybody, you had no sight lines. These guys would drag 1 or 2 guns, and usually if you try to drag a gun within 100 yards of an infantry unit, they just shoot you. But if they don't see you until you're within 20 yards, you can get that gun to within 40 yards of an enemy position and just open fire, and they don't know that there's a gun there until all of a sudden there's canister all over the place. And that was most of the expenditure. So what I'm trying to say is I've really looked at this. So even though it says artillery ammunition, I want people to understand that it's 90% of the time it represents artillery ammunition, but there are extreme cases in very dense woods where the small arms ammunition expenditure, it's again, how many wagons are you using up of stuff is how I calculate it. Anyway, I just wanted to bring that up. So that's all captured in a very straightforward, fairly easy to execute rule. You don't do any of that stuff. I did all the work for you, and all you do is keep track of where the wagon is and if it's within range of your HQ, and if not, you suffer some penalties as you move it around. So basically, the wagon represents the locus of a wagon trains. It's not just one wagon. And as long as their wagons are stably in parks, everybody's drawing ammunition and stuff as they need to, and everything's where it needs to be. But once you have to move it or it gets raided, everything kind of goes away for 12 to 24 hours. Things are a little bit verstummeled, as they say in New York.
So everything looks. I mean, I have been privileged to play this with you, so I know this is fantastic. But the physical components and all this stuff looks great. There's a ton of historical stuff in the back. There's a huge pile of battles here. Fair Oaks / Seven Pines, Spotsylvania, North Anna River, which I think I've only ever seen like one game on. Cold Harbor, which is not that many game ons, and the Overland campaign, plus all the campaign stuff.
And don't forget the 1862 7 Days battles, which is very fairly well covered at all. Most of them
play
solitaire, by the way,
which is even better for those who are inclined to play solitaire. I think this is a very good solitaire system too, just out of the box.
Let me
rephrase that. A good and viable game system to play solitaire right out of the box.
Thank you.
So the game looks great. These the maps have been the enormous pile of maps in this thing.
Yeah, so you have effectively the 7 maps. You've got maps A, B, C, and D are full-size maps.
Mm-hmm.
You have E, F, and G. Well, E and F are half maps, and G is sort of like a quarter map. But that gives you like sort of the bottom row of A, C, and D.
Yeah, and
then you've got this little thing that's only in the Overland campaign. So basically, and of course, Charlie Kibler, as always, did a magnificent job on the counters and on the. And as you saw, that's the extension. That's only used in the Overland campaign.
Okay.
And the answer is, why is that there? I had a choice, and Charlie and I talked about it. When you play the Cold Harbor scenario, not the Cold Harbor scenario, but if you play the campaign, without moving, we didn't want to move anything around from the reality. So I could have put a special rule in. He said, well, let me just give you this little card. There's that's the road that comes around where they came across the river. Mm-hmm. And I had to get the road. We needed the road.
Okay. I mean, there's plenty of map area here.
Yeah. Well, like I said, it's just
know.
there so that, in case you want to pull off the historical maneuver, the road is where it needs to be. That's the off-map display.
Yeah, the Union off-map display.
Now, just to be clear, that off-map display in Lemu's North, that whole off-map system now gets upgraded to the new theater module, because that's when all the theater stuff happens. And the same sequence of play, by the way, the off-map movement phase is the theater module plays in that, and that's the zone for it is in there. And this obviously you're playing this, you use this, but in the future you're going to be able to basically play the whole Peninsula campaign using these maps and some more I'll give you down the road, and you can play the whole Peninsula campaign. And you can play, of course, you can already play the 1864 campaign, and eventually you'll have the maps that cut around to Petersburg, Five Forks, and the whole bit.
It feels like you're trying to give us the entire Civil War in this system, Mark.
Yeah, that's the plan. Yeah,
I'm cool with that.
Hey, this is for me, this is something I've been wanting to do for a long time, and it's going to happen. And so when you asked me earlier, 6, 7 volumes, I think 6 if it needs 7, but now that I've got all, but mechanically, the series is now the building has been built. Now we can make new buildings, but we're not making new. The buildings look the same as the last building, except they have different scenarios, obviously. But now I can do the Mississippi. I can do the March to the Sea. The whole Atlanta campaign. That's what the theater lets me do.
I would love to see the March to the Sea, as you know.
Well, we will have it eventually. I mean, that's the plan.
So that's going to be awesome. Now you've got the scenario book or playbook, I guess we're saying, is 56 pages. The great majority of which are tied into the scenarios in some way. We can see the
well, actually, very little is in the scenario. The whole back of the book is my designer's notes and my Cleo's Corner article, which is like 15,000 words long.
Oh, it's huge. Yeah, no kidding. Starts on page 40.
So keep going. So how many pages is it from the beginning of my designer's notes?
The designer's notes start on page 40 and end on page
56. So you've got 40 pages, and in I would say the first 4 pages are the first 4 pages are the like the front material for setting up the scenarios and all that kind of front matter. There's the optional flank attack rule, and then you've got the campaign rules, which are I think another 6 pages. So if you take 10 out of, so there's 30 pages of scenario material is what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah. And you've got a really good looking bibliography here too. I will be investigating some of that personally. The book look great.
Yeah, like I said, bibliographies are getting a bit, I did this research for the article that's in Lemu's North. There are approximately, again, who counted them? I have no idea if this is true, but it's close enough. There are 65,000 books on the American Civil War.
Okay.
And they say approximately half, I don't quite believe that, are about Gettysburg. And the next battle that has any amount of books that's even close is Antietam, which has got like 2,000 books. So Gettysburg is the dominant, of the historiography that we have to read from. Gettysburg dominates stuff, and then of course you got everything else. But it's interesting to me.
Mm-hmm. Well, fortunately, I know a lot of research goes into this, but we are fortunate to be in the country where all of this happened, speaking the language that they yelled at each other in. So we don't have to go to France to do our research or anything like that.
And also, for me, it was, when I was 5, it was a centennial.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean like the founding of the United States. Well, actually, it would be close. But anyway, in 1960, 61, that's when all these books and, things, there was just a lot of publishing around the centennial. And I was able to read. So that's when it all started for me.
Mm-hmm.
So so if I'm going to be 72 and I was 5, 65 plus years of reading about the Civil War, I get to put it in here now.
It took me a moment to remember that you were talking about the centennial of the U.S. Civil War and not the bicentennial in 1976 that I remember.
No. I'm old. As I said to you, I'm much older.
I'm older than I look. But no, I mean the maps look. I mean, we're not surprised that Charlie has produced yet another banger of a map.
Okay? That's the other James River map. Malvern Hill should be on that one, right there in the middle, the right panel, right there. Yeah,
yep,
that's Malvern Hill.
Malvern Hill, right on the map. Awesome.
Yeah.
Hopefully, folks can see this in the frame, but
yeah, there's a lot of stuff.
Well,
and of course, what's important is. And by the way, some people go, I don't have enough table space. Then I ask them the very simple question. And let me ask you the question. How many large East Front games do you have? I actually know at least 2 series that you have a lot of.
A lot.
Yeah. So I like to think of this as my idea of drag, knock, Gettysburg.
Okay. So I do feel like I wouldn't be able to put the entire layout on this table, which is 4x8.
But you can do it as a conveyor. I do it as a conveyor.
Yeah, it's exactly how I would do it. It would totally work as a conveyor belt because you're moving along that long map the entire time.
And for any reason, if there's one guy hanging back, you just keep track of where he is.
And let me assure you, if you're playing the Union in this game, you are not pushing hard enough.
That's right. That's right. What's interesting, what was fascinating to me, some guy online really cracked me up. He goes, it's the beginning of the Overland campaign and Spotsylvania. So it's now May, May 12th, 13th.
Yeah.
And he goes, how come there's no Stewart HQ in the beginning setup? He goes, so somebody writes, he's dead. And I'm going like, thank you, somebody said it. But what's interesting to me is at the beginning of the Overland campaign, and this is what you have to sort of like kind of fuss with, is at one end of the map is, Grant's got the Army of Potomac, and on that F map that you were just holding up there, that's where Sheridan is.
Oh.
Sheridan has made his raid and gotten away, and he's over there, and he has to ride back. So
okay.
Sheridan is somewhere near Malvern Hill, basically, at the beginning of the game. So you got to sort of do a little bit of, you got to sort of, and of course the Confederates have cavalry screening him near Richmond. Do you have the Richmond map? Richmond's kind of cool because unlike any other game you've ever seen, that is the street map of Richmond. It's a quarter map one. It's map G, by the way.
Okay, good, because otherwise I'm going to have to look at them all.
No, it's map G, and it's a smaller map. You must have passed it somehow.
Oh, I did. Here it is, map G. In fact, there's the streets of Richmond right on the James.
Exactly. So there is actually Richmond in all its glory, and to win the Overland campaign, you actually have to. I mean, when I say capture Richmond, it's not a theoretical thing. You actually have to put divisions into those streets. And you have to break through those forts. It's exciting.
Yeah. Is there a special provision for combat in the urban hexes?
Yeah, well,
because I asked because I never got there when you were playing the Confederates.
So the answer is yes. There are, in certain kinds of terrain, there's restrictions on the use of artillery. Because you could bring, it doesn't work very well in a street setting. To bring up, and also they had a general reluctance to kill civilians. It's not World War II.
Right.
It's not. Now, during the siege of Vicksburg, of course, they were shelling the city and people were living in caves. I mean, it did. There were ugly moments, but That wasn't what was going on here.
Mm-hmm. So tell me about this innovation. There's a red die.
Well, that was the same thing, and that's the same thing in Rebel Fury. So,
okay.
So the way, so you've played. I guarantee you've played 100, if not 1,000, tactical games where morale matters, right?
Yeah.
So, as it turns out, in the Civil War, as a general rule, if you were in an open setting and like Pickett's charge, and what's behind you is open ground,
mm-hmm.
you just retreat. You know, you could just fall back. When you're if you're in entrenchments or in woods, because you can't see everybody, that's the morale die. So basically you're making a morale check, but it's very simply done.
Yeah, it's 50-50.
It's 50-50. And unless you're in an entrenchment, because if you're in an entrenchment, you're forced to retreat, you're you're captured. I mean, you surrender. You don't retreat. You don't retreat because you just put your hands up, otherwise they'll kill you. So, you know, it's like the unfinished railroad at Gettysburg. It's like any entrenchment that's ever captured. If they swarm over the trench, they start killing people. People just drop their guns, raise their hands, and they don't kill prisoners. As a general rule, there were a couple of atrocities, particularly white Southerners versus colored troops, like was it Fort Pillow and all that kind of stuff. But as a general rule, they didn't do it. Once people put their hands up, they surrendered. And they didn't kill them.
Kai's knocking it out of the park with the dice coloration too nowadays, by the way. I don't know how well you can tell that there's a handsome blue and gray dice.
Now she's well, first of all, Kai has very quickly become probably the best production person in the business already. She's very competent and she's very smart, and she's putting all that to our collective benefit. So thank you, Kai.
I don't have to change the dice out anymore.
I love the dice, and like I said, I couldn't be more pleased with where things are going. They're going exactly how I wanted them to go. Oh, by the way, in this game, you have Jefferson Davis is in this game, by the way.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Look at the 7 days battle.
Well, there he is.
And by the way, this was a fun moment on the internet. And by the way, the guy who did this is a really good guy. So this is not to cast shade on anybody. So he goes to me, I don't understand what use Jefferson Davis is. And so I write back, okay, I know this guy's a really good player. I said, do you want me to tell you, or would you like to think about it for a few minutes? He goes, let me think about it. And of course, he figured out in like about 20 seconds, and he figured out, I don't want to tell anybody because I don't want to spoil the fun. But Jefferson Davis is actually critical in the 2-player 7 days battle scenario.
I can see why somebody would say that at a glance, though, since he's got a big fat 0 on the counter.
Right, but the most important rule you have to remember is if you're using Davis since he's got a 0, if he's the active HQ, you can everybody you're out of command from him, you have to move toward him. So he's wonderful at conducting a retreat towards Richmond.
And he was a military guy, went to West Point with all these other guys.
And he had the Mississippi Rifle. He was the commander of the Mississippi Rifles in the Mexican War. No, let's not forget he was Buchanan's Secretary of War.
Yes, that's true.
So he was very well qualified. I think he might have been better as a Confederate general than as a Confederate president, but that's beside the point.
Maybe, but history was fortunate enough.
Well, history has worked out the way it is,
Yeah, exactly right. There was like a W symbol, I think, that confused somebody that I was asking.
All it is in the wilderness scenario. So in Rebel Fury, there's a Bernie division, and there's Mott's division. And what happened was, for a variety of reasons, Mott's division kept being attached to Bernie's division and unattached from Bernie's division. And so in Rebel Fury, you have Bernie A and Bernie B. Okay. Now, in this one, because of the campaign, I wanted to bring Mott into the game. So the W is a wilderness counter for Rebel Fury, and you would use it the setups are for the campaign in this game, and you take out Bernie B and you put in Mott, and then you're that's all it is. It's just
that makes sense. That's I was figuring it was something like that.
Yeah, but it wasn't a mistake. It was never a mistake. It was just I made a decision in Rebel Fury, and I chose to revisit it. Here.
Counters look registration.
Oh yeah,
is aces on this whole thing.
Yeah. The production quality. I mean, whoever they're using to print this stuff, I mean, knows what they're doing at this point, and they clearly know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And they punch out very nice. Now, I want to say, I did clip my copy, and because of there I have found, and you're one of them, but there are a few other people I know who are you enjoy clipping. I mean, is it just as an activity? I'm not saying
watch TV, clip counters.
Yeah, and so I think I can show this. So Andy Lewis, who is of GMT, we were at the convention up in Schenectady, and he gave me he brought an Army of the Potomac, and he gave it to me to use at the convention. And then afterwards, he goes, "Hey, if you want, I'll take your unclipped copy, and you can have my clipped copy." so this copy here is Andy Lewis's personally. And by the way, Andy Lewis clipped my Pacific War, by the way.
Oh, good for him. Good for you, I guess.
And I think a guy named Jeff Fry. He goes by Hex to Hex, Hexy.
Yeah, I know Hexy.
Great guy.
Yeah.
So he goes to me, and I did the same thing I did with you with Axis Empire. He goes to me, "I'm really curious about this Thunderbolt. You told me I wouldn't like it." I said, "Yeah, but it turns out that I ended up with an extra copy. So I'll tell you what. I'll give you this extra copy of Thunderbolt if you'll clip my 3-dog that I just got." And he said, "Okay." So apparently he just sent me a note. It's all clipped and organized. He's mailing it back. So this trading games for clipping thing is becoming a thing for me. I really like it.
Well, I was happy with the deal. I was happy with the deal just for the inevitable story that would occur. To be honest. Plus, I had it all down by then. You got the V2 organization scheme on
it's so beautifully cut and organized. I'm afraid to take it out of the box sometimes.
Everything's all just organized by card number. That's it, and faction and card number.
Well, that's what Alan Ember, God rest his soul. He told me my Krieg is, he told me long ago, just organize it by the card number, and I did that. I've been doing that since the beginning of time. In fact, I just played Krieg. Do like that game. Always enjoy that game.
I never played the original. I didn't look at it until it was already Totaler Krieg, and then I didn't play it until it was Axis Empires.
Yeah,
and now we've got, of course, the huge new one.
I would say that. So one is Totaler Krieg is so. Krieg begins on September 1st, 1939. So the political system is there for the invading and all that stuff, but it's all within that the traditional beginning of World War II. There's only one scenario, so there's only one way to play it. You set it up, and it's September 1st, 1939. Totaler Krieg. In between, Alan was starting monkey around with this Days of Decision kind of. That's not what he was calling it, but World War I came out differently, or he wanted to do more of the sandbox, so he backed up Totaler Krieg more to like 1936, I think, or 1937. So you get more of the political stuff in Totaler Krieg, and I think Axis Empires just took that to well, they also combined it with Dicenso, and so it went down that path. But Krieg is sort of like if you're playing solitaire, you don't want to deal with all that. You don't want to try to fake yourself out politically, so you just kind of get on with it. So I like Krieg for that particular reason.
Yeah. All right. So right now, I think I'm going to put a link to the P500 page for Lee Moves North, which is the anticipated.
Let's see what it is. This is a real time. Let's see what it says right now. Let me see here. GMT games. Here we go. And it says 474. What is that? That's 36 to go.
Yep, and it's been out. It's been up on P500 for what, 2 months, maybe?
No, 1 week.
Oh, was it just this past update?
Yeah,
I'm getting them mixed up in my head now.
Yeah, so, it's going well. I mean, it's going at a good pace. It's summertime, but it'll obviously make its numbers. It's all handed in already, by the way.
Yes, I think you had said.
Yeah,
so that's great. So what is up next for?
So it is going to be the Iron Dice of Battle. It is going to be Vicksburg and Corinth. And
cool.
And if I can, I'm going to try to sneak first and second Manassas in, but I'm not sure. That may have to wait one more volume, but we're definitely going west. It's definitely Vicksburg, and it's definitely Corinth, Shiloh.
Okay. How, do you have an idea of how you will handle the siege yet?
Oh yeah, that's not a. You actually start to deal with it here. Remember, you've got fortifications, and you already have. I already put in heavy artillery into the game, and so bombardments. If both sides have heavy guns, there will be a camp. It'll be a siege rule, which will be added to the campaign for Vicksburg. But that's not a problem. And I've actually. Have you ever been to Vicksburg?
No.
I have actually. I got a whole. So right near Vicksburg is a place called the Waterways Experimentation Station, which is the epicenter of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, who handles all the waterways of the United States. And they've got, full-size models of all the waterways in the United States that they use for figuring out where to put levees. And it's a real place. And Vicksburg is there. So I once did a job a long time ago, and I got a ridiculous tour of the and by the way, the Vicksburg battlefield is fairly untouched because not a lot of development out in Vicksburg, Mississippi, apparently. At least back when I mean, this goes back 30 years ago. But when I was there, I mean, the Union Army might have marched away 3 days after I got there for the way it looked.
Wow. I have been. I don't think I've ever been on a battlefield tour. No, I haven't. I've never visited a Civil War battlefield. Obviously, that has to be remedied at some point. We've even got a couple of skirmishes that happened here in Ohio.
Yeah, well, what's going to happen? I mean, Jeff, Hexie is October 19th. A bunch of us are getting together at Gettysburg, and he's got a tour guide who is this guy Phil is a tour guide. Is a good friend of his. So we're going to have a tour guide, a bunch of war gamers showing up on October 9th. In fact, my wife's even coming, although she's going to go shopping. She loves all the antique shops, but that's okay. It's going to be like a day trip for a 2-day trip for us. We'll go down, stay at the Marriott, and my goal is I really want to stand on the peach orchard, and I helped to reconstitute the peach orchard, and now it's all grown up. I want to see how it came out. Yeah,
there's a peach orchard at the peach orchard again now.
Well, when I was on the Gettysburg Foundation 20 plus years ago. The peach orchard was killed by something called a nematode worms. And so there was a project created, and I was part of at least oversight of it for a little while. And they have to pump this chemical into the ground, and it takes 3 years to kill nematodes. To really wipe them out, it takes 3 years. And then they had to plant the peach. Then they had to clean up the ground now that to get the chemicals out. And then you have to plant peach trees, and then the peach trees have to grow. So apparently 20 years later, there's a peach orchard now. So I want to see it.
Yeah, I don't blame you at all. I'm just laying out all the very, very sharp components here. We may get a picture after we're wrapped here. There's a great deal of stuff in the box.
And by the way, I don't know what the MSRP is, but this was going for like under $50. I think.
Yeah, it's not for people. Yeah, I forget what it was too, and I don't even know.
Well, Dan, who cracks me up. I think Dan kept yelling, "It's too cheap." I was like, "Hey."
Oh well, yeah.
It's my move towards affordability, and I'm not running for office.
Well, that is appreciated too, and it really feels like compared to the average war game costs nowadays. I mean, there's a lot of variables that go into that, obviously.
But everything now Lee Moves North is going to be 88 P500, but I believe it goes to 122 MSRP. So it's a good. I mean, $40. It's 50% off basically.
Yeah. Well, it's always worth just paying the P500 price because then you get it sooner too. Also, I think there's a tremendous amount of play value in this box and in Rebel Fury, and I'm sure that Lee Moves North is going to be similar. There's like a tremendous amount of play value that we're getting in this box for the $60 or whatever it cost.
Yeah, it was actually it was like 50. It was under 50, but let's call it 50.
Yeah,
so which is really the price of a war game, a victory game, actually. Pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, so that's pretty good after all these years. But I think that the key is there are literally, I'm looking at from here, I can see, I had the like tactical Civil War games, and I'm looking at 3 different systems just from here. There's obviously campaign series that I know you're fond of.
Yep.
This one is sort of like its own thing. I've got
it is
2-level. It's 2-level. It plays the battle. You're an army commander. It's got all the same. It's got elements of all. It does all the campaign stuff, but now it does a theater thing and it does the battle thing. So I feel like this was the series I always wanted to do, and I'm very happy. And again, remember, I play this stuff. I can, when. You wanted to see 2 things that
by all means.
Hang on, I gotta disconnect some cords here.
I gotta figure out how to.
You're still there? Okay.
Yep, everything's good here.
So again, I'm looking. It's hard for me to look backwards. Okay, so that is the lower 4 maps, and that's Antietam. That's the Antietam campaign. And so you can see this is maps. What is that? F, E, F, G, and H. E, of course, over here. That's where Sharpsburg happens. So you have multiple 1-map scenarios on the Sharpsburg map. You've got South Mountain Battle, and then you've got the 4-mapper, which is the whole Antietam campaign. And then I know seen a lot of shots, and that's the entire Gettysburg game that I'm in the middle of right now. It's right now the 27th of June, and the next turn, Meade takes over the army. So you can see in this one, I'm trying to use the Antietam battle. So there's a big battle in Pleasant Valley this time, and Ewell's tried to turn the flank, but Reynolds with 3 corps have smacked them back, so they have to fall back. But Lee is, fighting it out in the Pleasant Valley, trying to get towards Frederick to cut off the Union army.
That looks incredible.
Just another experiment.
That looks incredible. So I guess the last question I want to ask, and I think we've talked about this too. So for those who have played the original Gettysburg incarnation of the game system that appeared in C3I, Lee Moves North is going to basically give us a new rendition of Gettysburg.
There is really no. I mean, obviously the topic, the scale is different. The units are different, and the only thing that it has in common is the sort of the how I handle movement, but everything else is different. And that was really the breakthrough for me. I didn't want to do a when Roger asked me to do this introductory game, I could have done a blue and gray Gettysburg game 10 minutes. It could have been 12 if I was a little slow. I hadn't had coffee, and I could have done that in 12 minutes and just dialed it in. But I didn't want to do that. If I was going to finally do a Gettysburg game, I was going to okay, let me sit down and have a deep think. And I really thought through what is different about the 19th century. And then there was Waterloo, and Waterloo really opened my eyes to where Waterloo is really the real originator of this series, and the combat system is what really got more. And the part I really added to Rebel Fury, which I'm very happy with, is I have been unhappy about Civil War combat. I don't mean tactical games, by the way. Tactical games is here's how far you are. I'm shooting my artillery. I hit you. I don't hit you. That stuff's fine. But everything else I've ever seen on the Civil War that's not that, I have been unhappy with, because casualties is like the main metric, and it's force ratios. And if you read the actual, what Grant talked about after the Battle of Spotsylvania, that's in Rebel Fury, Grant wrote a letter to Halleck, and he describes that I came within a hair's breadth of winning the war. We'll probably get him tomorrow. But he doesn't talk about casualty. He says, I didn't lose any chess pieces, and Lee lost a division, a brigade, and a regiment. So I'm winning. That's how he looked at it. Casualties were, as long as your pieces are still, movable and doing things, he didn't see that as and if Grant didn't see it, why would we? I mean, he's the guy fight. And Lee was the same way. Lee would fight a battle with outnumbered all the time. It wasn't the thing they thought about. They thought about, And they also knew what I really wanted to bring about in Rebel Fury and this whole series in general is the risk calculus of a Civil War general. That has never been the case in my mind, really handled this way, because you're gonna have to keep fighting. You're gonna lose 2 out of 3 assaults generally. Mm-hmm. That is not a common war game. That's not a warm and fuzzy war game experience. But it is how they thought about. They knew that's how it was. And if you really want to understand the Civil War, you have to understand the combat, because that's where the rubber meets the road. So everybody talks about the game's got a lot of maneuver in it. That's true, but eventually you got to take the hill, mm-hmm. and then you start to say, "I just hit that hill 3-4 times, and then the 5th time it worked." Now you're thinking like a Civil War general. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. In fact, today, if you saw my Twitter thing, I just reread Lee's account of the Battle of Antietam, and there's like each side achieved there's like 1 or 2. There's like 3 successful assaults in the whole battle. And one of them was AP Hill at the very end. Mm-hmm. And there was a Jackson counterattack. And there was a Union attack that got, that knocked out Jones. And, and everything else was sort of like a back and forth. They were mm-hmm. killing each other, but not a lot happening. Mm-hmm. That's how Lee saw it.
Yeah, well, putting us in the players into the decision space of the people that were there is kind of the idea, right? And we have a long tradition of doing war games a certain way, and this is done a little bit differently. And I describe it to folks as even some of my super hardcore Hex Encounter guys, by the way, are big fans of the system.
Oh, good.
Who are like. I explained it to my buddy this way. It's like some of the rules in OCS where you look at them and say, you're reading the rule book, you've never played it, you're reading the rule book and you're looking at it and thinking, well, this can't work. And then you start playing it and it totally works. That is how my reaction to Rebel Fury 2.
Good.
So
and
it
the other thing
fantastic.
Thank you. Well, like I said, and that whole passing mechanic is handling chaos. I'm handling, again, I did this in Pacific War. I'm handling time. The asymmetric use of time is actually part of the commander's calculus. Mm-hmm. And so, again, it's very focused on Grant, Lee, McClellan, Hooker, Meade. And that's the world that they lived in. And again, and this is important, as I told you before, believe it or not, this is, you can have a better shot, but there's Grant. I mean, this is what Grant's doing in the middle of the battle. He's got his legs crossed, and he's just sitting there whittling or just looking around. That's the middle of the battle. That's what he's not on a horse. He's not leading a charge. He's sitting there. He's giving his orders, and he wants to see, and he's just got to find out what's going to happen.
Yep.
That's how it is.
Awesome. Well, Mark, I'm going to pack this up. Thanks for doing this with us today. I really appreciate it. Like I said,
my pleasure.
For the viewers, I will be putting a link to the next volume in the series, Lee Moves North, in the video description, so you can check that out. It is up for P500 on GMT's webpage right now.
If I got to say one more thing, I had a particularly good day. I actually finished the design for Mad Dog of the Med today, so I'm just saying it. And now I have to make a prototype, and that'll be what I do for the rest of the week. But I'm very excited.
Okay.
I finally put it in code.
You don't have to sell me on that one either.
No, I'm not worried about it. It'll make the P500. I'm not worried about it.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. For folks who don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, this is the iteration of the Empire of the Sun system into the Mediterranean theater of World War II, correct?
100%. And actually, but when I say Mediterranean theater, it also includes Abyssinia, all of the Levant, it's got the whole naval campaign, Rommel. Mm-hmm. I just sort of ended when, after Torch, the war in North Africa really becomes about the beginning of the battle for the continental Europe. And that'll be maybe something I'm slowly backing. My goal is to go from Empire of the Sun, Mad Dog of the Med, and then I'll finally come back into the big one, because I'm scaling up, not scaling down. Everybody keeps trying to scale down. Here's my army of 40 divisions, and now I want to do a battalion combat with that system in Pacific. I'm going the other way. So I think it scales up better than it scales down. But that's just
well, I think it's going to be brilliant as usual. So
that's very kind, and I'm sure I'll disappoint most.
Well, you'll disappoint some people with sore behinds. Let me put it that way.
Okay.
But the game is going to be fantastic. So once again, Mark, thanks for doing this with us this evening.
My pleasure. Have a good one, Gary.